Hey, it's me, Big P, and I'm here to go over the Lansing Seal Deadeye that I league started with. We're a little over a week or so into the league, and I kind of have it set up ultimately how I personally would want it for my own purposes of magic finding very fast on lower tier maps. But I actually felt compelled to do a full video guide, not only because Lansing Seal is kind of quirky in the way that it works, especially with the new Deadeye, but also because I was very pleasantly surprised with how far the build got. I was able to go all the way up to 5-way Maven fights, deathless, which is way further than I initially thought that this build would get, because basically half the gear is dedicated to increasing the quantity of items found, not really so much actually being good pieces of gear. But even so, we've been able to push into red maps. Basically all Atlas progression you see here, which isn't much, has been a result of this character without, finding different gear, although you could swap the gloves and boots and get proper rings and maybe even a proper amulet, and you would have a fantastic build that probably could push well into the end game. And we'll say that Deadeye itself, not only because of its position on the tree, but what the ascendancy gives you, except for Wind Ward, is kind of a glass cannon, but we'll go into that as I run a map. It's not that scary, and I actually don't even have that many high level maps. I probably wouldn't try and push my build currently the way it's set up further than tier 14. You could probably get away with it, but you probably don't even need to, because I think with the new Echoes of the Atlas expansion, the way that these sorts of Atlas skill trees juice even the lower tier maps, I think low tier map farming is back on the menu. At least if you don't want to have a dedicated bossing character and you don't want to farm that way, you kind of just want to level with some friends, or just, run around in lower tier maps without worrying about dying so much. I'm actually almost all the way to 93 on this character, where I kind of stopped caring about deaths at 90, but it just kept going. I hesitate to call the build tanky. We'll say it has incidental survivability, and I'll probably get into that when we go over the gear, specifically the life gain on hit on the ring. But yeah, a couple things to mention before we hop into the map, which isn't that scary. Just what is it? Extra damage is fire. It's probably the only really relevant modifier. So a couple things I'd like you to pay attention to: both the number of steel shards, not really so much, because when you have all your buffs up, you're shooting and reloading it, pretty much immediately. I personally have two setups for it, where my right click will shoot and my mouse 5 will reload, and I also have that on my left hand, where W is shoot and E is reload, because even though it's a 2-button skill, there's a couple ways to get around it to make it feel a little bit smoother, especially if you're Deadeye and you have a lot of action speed and you have the Lord of Steel gem and you've even invested on the tree. Your use speed is way higher, and it really is pretty crucial to be kind of spamming it during the build, but we'll get into that. In addition, I'd like you also to pay attention to my stacks of Gale Force, considering that the less damage taken here is technically conditional, yes, but you'll go back up to the 10 stacks, which is max of Wind Ward, pretty quickly. So it ended up being way more consistent than I expected it to be, and again, contributing to, let's say, incidental survivability. Not exactly tankiness, although 30% less damage taken at full stacks, in addition with 20%, 50% less damage taken, and a full build would probably use a Kintsugi, but a lot of people are trying to find a Kintsugi nowadays. I think it's still like 4x, maybe up to 6. No, I think it's like around 4. Maybe it's dropped a bit. Maybe it was bugged. Anyway, let's get into the map. But one last thing I do want to mention is to try and be aware of the properties that my Lansing Steel has. Do I want to use Fork? I guess Atoll is kind of an open map, so let's use Fork to get more coverage with the projectiles. You kind of have to be aware with the way that projectile, let's call it, priority works. So the first thing that'll happen is Pierce. It's Pierce, Fork, Chain, and Return. Return is a very specific one that's not really relevant, so the ones you really want to pay attention to are Pierce, Fork, and Chain. And I see a lot of people using Pierce in main links, and or using the Lionized Vision chest piece, which gives you hello. That'll give you just kind of more forks than you really want. I mean, pierces than you really want. I'll go into exactly what that is. Basically, you get the one chain on the Deadeye now, and with the way that Ricochet works, you kind of don't want to override your chain with something like, for example, on the Pierce Gem, Pierce 4 additional targets, you'll never ever be using that chain, utilizing that chain, which is kind of a shame because not only is chain, you know, fantastic in its own right, a pre-patch version of the build actually used chain in the main links because, I mean, you were able to kind of mitigate the downside of the chain gem, which I think now without the Deadeye's Ascendancy giving it 10% more damage, it's kind of really hard to justify using chain in main links. You don't really need it. Right now with just the fork gives us some more coverage. Wow, that's bad FPS right now. What's going on? Wow, look at that dip. I really dipped down. What else am I running? That's it. Yeah, I don't know. I just disagree with seeing people using chain and main links. I think you're kind of really hamstringing your Ascendancy, and it might feel better initially for overall coverage, but after a certain damage threshold, it's not really necessary for you to use. And I guess I'll go over why that is. And you can kind of see. So specifically the way that Ricochet, the Deadeye Ascendancy point works is that skills have a chance to chain. And I'm not sure if that will work if you're overriding it with projectiles. And what I mean by that is, with Pierce rather. What I mean by that is if the projectile that hits the wall is supposed to pierce first instead of chain, it might eat the projectile and you never get it. Not to say that the build is like, you know, revolves around bouncing your projectiles off walls to necessarily do damage. It's just sort of a relevant thing that I think people need to be aware of. You might just throw Pierce in your build and be like, yeah, that feels good. Let's see some single target damage. Oh god, Maven. Maven, I'm trying to do a video, please. So Herald of Purity is really nice because he's not even paying attention to me, as you can see. Not fantastic single target, but thank you, Maven. Hey, come on, man. Oh god, a Maven's invitation. I almost want to do it in the build guide. It's a 5-way. Yeah, let's put my money where my mouth is. Fuck it. So for example, in this 5-way Maven fight I'm about to do, if your projectiles are piercing, they won't chain between. Actually, let's go into vicious projectiles instead of fork, because fork actually overrides the chain as well. It's better for clear, but it kind of splits your projectile into like this way when coming out first. So then these two, when they hit something, they can chain, which will be pretty effective and great for clear. But for single target, Pierce will just make them keep following the same trajectory and not follow. So yeah, let's just do it. How exciting would that be? I didn't even plan that out. I didn't even realize that that was a high enough tier map to do it. Let's give it a try. I guess it's worth... Oh, wow. I had my precision turned off there. Totems are nice. You can use Ancestral Protector because it gives you attack speed, which obviously will contribute to DPS. But beyond that, you can't use War Chief. So let's see if I can do this Deathless. I'm curious. So we're using both Far Shot and... Vicious projectiles. It's not bad. Let's deal with this guy first. I really don't like him. It's not bad. You see, he kind of incidentally will off-screen people that you're not really paying attention to, even when using Sniper's Mark. I'm not entirely sure how Sniper's Mark works with, you know, so what level was that? 78, you know. This is nothing super fancy. I'm very impressed with the fact that my Magic Find setup can do these sort of things. One of my initial, you know, things that I was kind of worried about with the build was whether or not I would be able to get these. I'll do this later. I don't want to do this on the video, and then everybody tells me in the comments that I'm an idiot for doing the wrong one. But yeah, the build. Let's go over the gear, I guess, because then we can get into exactly how you might want to tweak it for your own personal setup. So my setup was built for Magic Find, and so something like Sejima's Touch might as well only have one modifier on it, and that is the 10% increased quantity of items. I'm using Brutality in my links, so the 2 elemental damage to attack modifiers I don't get. And my energy shield is here, technically, but as soon as I left click and I use Blood Rage, it's gone. So yeah, quantity. You can find a pair of gloves in the first act of the game, pick them up off the floor, and you already have improved on the build, because this is doing next to nothing. By the same token, we have something like Gold Worm, which is, you know, some resistances, which is nice. Perfect fire res roll, actually, and one-off perfect quant roll. Bit of mana regen, which is okay, but you don't really need it because you have mana gained on hit, and you just don't need it. And only 10% move speed kind of sucks. Dang it, I forgot to go D&D. So yeah, you don't, again, it is technically a pair of boots. You're not walking around barefoot, but you could very easily find a better pair of boots for this and push yourself over 4K life, which I would probably recommend if you're going to try bossing or any sort of late game stuff. Thief's Torment, again, I wouldn't really recommend for general use. However, life gained on hit for something like Lancing Steel, which is always sort of firing, and then depending on, I really would recommend using Chain to just kind of keep it going between the packs and even between the bosses as you're doing them. The life gain on hit is going to be huge. You are leeching some life from your attacks, but that on top of the immediate life gain on hit, 43, which is pretty nice. It's incidental survivability, not direct tankiness. It will help you survive rituals. It will help you survive boss fights, even without a lot of adds. If you can just funnel a bunch of projectiles at him, it reminds me of like old Volpact. And Lancing Steel is really good, almost better than something like Cyclone, because when you consider the fact that the number of projectiles after I dash fires 24 and a fully loaded one, I mean, the stuff that's chaining off the walls, it can get pretty crazy. What else I want to go over? Again, Spine-Fused Talismans are the base type that have quantity on them. Fantastic for my purposes. And this isn't a terrible amulet, but it's not a good amulet either. It's, you know, everything besides that energy shield is somewhat relevant. You could obviously get a way better one. I bought this for less than 10 chaos, maybe 5 chaos. I had a live search up first weekend. You know, talismans are in the ritual loot pool, so you'll probably be able to snipe one. If you're interested, I could put a live search, but you really just search for the Spine-Fused Talisman base, and then maybe 9% minimum, so you can get 9 or 10, and then look at what you have there to buy in Trade League. Yeah, it's pretty good to go over. Overall, I have, 54 quantity. I feel like I was using something else, but let's get into actual pieces of gear that I might recommend for beyond general use. Duresso's Defiance I probably wouldn't recommend for a late game setup. I kind of just like this because it's conditional boosts when I'm mapping. So Onslaught, it gives me, I can drop the Onslaught Flask, and just have it up pretty much all the time while I'm mapping. In addition, we get endurance charges to kind of bring up the physical damage reduction. If you really wanted to go like super magic find or whatever mode, I don't know if you can really fit in more. I guess the Nomad is giving me, yeah, a decent bit of my elemental resistances. So if you want to use like a Bisco's Leash instead there, or I was using the Perandus Blazon, which can roll up to 8 quantity. Again, wouldn't recommend it for general use. Duresso's I like as kind of like an early game. You can get it real cheap early in the league because no one really uses it, but it'll help you get speed. Initially, I was going to go for the Queen of the Forest with like evasion stacking and stuff like that, but I couldn't really get to the breakpoints with my current gear setup that I wanted to, and I kind of just wanted an armor evasion hybrid base anyway. This effectively, I'm not going to compare the two really because they do very different things, but this gives me speed and gives me endurance charges, which, you know, they're both conditional, but are not never up, let's say. It's the sort of thing that is really good for mapping, and that's what we want to do with this build. We want to map. I probably wouldn't be able to push further than like tier 14 content, I would say. With my current setup, you can definitely swap some stuff around. I think the best in slot chess piece would probably be Kintsugi, but that's probably true for a lot of different builds this league. And I think last time I checked, there were like 4x. Maybe they've dropped a bit, but yeah. Between Wind Dancer full stacks giving us 30 and... No, this is Wind Dancer, and Wind Ward stacks giving us 30, 20. We have 50% less damage already. Less damage taken on the initial hits. Again, kind of conditional, but kind of not, because you'll get a lot more evasion rating, and, you know, you want to be moving around a lot as the day. You saw in the map and in the boss fight as well that it's a sort of thing where it's an active play style. I think Mathel just did a Deadeye, and he said it himself, you know, where the Deadeye is on the tree. Even though I came all the way here, I didn't fill out the life wheel yet. I don't think I will, honestly. Again, I don't want to push this build much further. But things that you could do, I mean, if you get life on these and life on your helmet, life on your rings, things like that, you should be well above 4K life, if not 5K, which is probably where I would recommend, especially for softcore. You know, as long as you get 6 portals and you can make it through, then your build works, I guess. I don't know. But let's keep going. I don't want to dwell too much. Duressos I like. There's a million other chess pieces you can use. I would not use Lionized Vision, though, because giving your projectiles a bunch of Pierce will make it so that to be able to chain when colliding with terrain. I actually don't know, because obviously you can't take the second part of this without having a chain. Like, is this any projectile will have a chance to chain? I'm not sure. Me personally, I like to be sure that these sorts of things are working, so I'm not going to run anything else. I actually was, before I got to enough damage where I could actually clear packs properly, I would only really do something like Poacher's Aim, something to add just 1 Pierce, because you really don't want your Pierce overriding your Fork or your Chain. And if you're using Pierce and main links, that's really what's going to happen. You're never going to really get the effect of the Chain, which is a smart projectile, whereas Pierce and Fork are dumb projectiles. They will follow the trajectory, whereas Chain will have auto-target and clear packs more effectively. Just keep that in mind. I mean, you kind of have to tinker with it yourself. I haven't tried with like Splitting Steel or whatever the other steel skills are. I kind of prefer Lancing Steel. Lancing Steel is a sort of skill that seems like a single target skill, but you can make work for clear. Obviously, if you get like an Explodey chest, bada bing, there's your build. I mean, it's not that hard to do. Nowadays with Harvest, or you just buy one. I'm not a big Harvest crafter, so I'm going to do that. Oh, I didn't even quality this. Wow. Devotos is nice for a little bit of Chaos Res and move speed. We love it. Attack speed, and you can take the reduced global physical damage. It's overall an increase in DPS and survivability and everything you kind of want. I was also using Rat's Nest before, but you could also use a rare helm with, you know, better stuff than that. And then the weapons, what were the other weapons? So as soon as I got into maps, I was using, do I have it here? Skava. Using Skava and Prismatic Eclipse. You could also go for On's Might. These are like 1 chaos, couple chaos items if you want a really good one rolled. Then I moved into some well-rolled Ichimonjis. If you are dual wielding Ichimonjis, you can bring your max stacks of, whatchamacallit, where is it? Action speed modifier will go up from 20 at max stacks to 21%. That's from your Tailwind buff. So if you like a very, very small little bit of juice you can get from dual wielding the katanas. But ultimately I would go for the Bell Timber Blade because you get a lot for this. Additional projectiles. So the way that if you can see right there on the second line, fires 18 projectiles. I'm not sure exactly how the calculations for 2 additional projectiles works, but it goes from 18 to 24 after I use a movement skill. That's not 2, but I'm not complaining. It yeah, it just helps. You could maybe even use 2. I bought this for a little over an X the first weekend. They're down to like 5 chaos now because it is a very farmable boss drop. You could probably even go for them in SSF if you were so inclined. But if I had to do it again, I would pay another X for it because it's so fucking good. It's just amazing for the build. Ultimately, I think the late game setup would be this and a savior in the offhand, but you know, a savior can make almost any build good, so I don't think that's really worth noticing. Really, all you need is a decent bit of a decent sword or 2. You could probably get maybe Harvestcraft a more powerful one-handed foil or something for better crit multi. Something to consider is that despite being in a bunch of crit chance here and in Fatal Blade, and I think like here we have Honed Edge and Twin Terrors, despite that we are still working with critical strike chance 5% on both of these weapons, and so we kind of have a pitiful crit chance on our attack with only 22.5 and pretty much no other conditional. We don't have power charges, no buffs like that. A little bit of a shame there, but it does contribute to overall DPS to go crit. It's just worth it to go crit. Obviously, some rare foils would have better time doing that, but anyway, I don't want the video to go on too much longer. We have the Nomad here. Nomad, I've seen a lot of actual builds using this, and I would agree that this is a fantastic belt, particularly if you're going into Iron Grip on the tree. My tree's a little scuffed and goes up here. Most trees go along here or here and go into Call to Arms and use like Enduring Cry or something like that. And get more life and stuff like that. I don't really care. Again, this was for speed farming lower tier maps because map juicing is back on the menu with these smaller, like you can beef up your Atlas passive trees and then drop those areas down to low tier maps. For example, I've been able to sustain arcades at tier 8 right now, kind of just to help my friends level and we make a bunch of money while we're doing it. You know, it's nice and simple, and yeah, if I wanted to, I could most certainly invest into this build more and push it further, but right now, I kind of am okay with the way it is, and so far, let's go into my gem skill. This is already turning into a pretty long video, but I guess we did have that Maven fight in the map, whatever. So I have an Enlighten with Precision, Pride, and Herald of Purity. I can't really remember what I was using before. I have a Dread Banner somewhere here, yeah. So you have to mix and match Precision and Dread Banner here to get yourself to a usable amount of mana. I actually wasn't able to use Pride and didn't really see the point of it until I realized that you probably should take Point Blank on this build, even though you're also using Far Shot. Not on the Ascendancy, but you get it from here. And it's actually the exact same Far Shot, I believe. Yeah, so I'm not sure if that's a new change or if that was buffed with this or whatever, but either way. Those are my auras. And then we have Sniper's Mark, Blood Rage, the Ice Golem that I don't have a button for. I don't really use this, but this is how you would bring up your crit strike chance and accuracy if you weren't super lazy and actually wanted to cast it. I guess maybe you could put it in your cast when damage taken setup, but mine is with Steel Skin and Vulnerability. Vulnerability just kind of makes it so that if a pack actually does get onto you or a rare mob does a bit of damage, you'll be able to proc a bleed on it, do increased physical damage to it, and just get it out of your hair a little bit more because, you know, we're not using multi-curse setup, but you can cast your Sniper's Mark on a boss to, I mean, it's pretty huge. You'll notice, it's a noticeable damage difference between a cursed and non-cursed enemy, and this is a conditional curse here in the vulnerability, and obviously Steel Skin is just my guard skill. Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily recommend this, nor would I really recommend my movement skill setup. I would definitely use probably Whirling Blades instead. I think I see most Whirling Blades or Leap Slam. Everybody else, because I actually don't get Fortify in my build. There's no other way for me to fit Fortify into my build unless I like corrupted something here, but I don't even think that works because this is a projectile attack. This is just a preference for me. I like Dash. Blood Magic is good because otherwise it would pretty much immediately eat up your entire mana pool, and Second Wind is almost necessary for links with Dash, I feel like, at this point. So yeah, that's just my preference. You could I would probably recommend doing a 4-link with Blood Magic, Fortify, Faster Attacks, Whirling Blades, and or Leap Slam, whatever you prefer. I don't see everybody using Ancestral Protector. This is kind of what I went for instead of the Whirling Blades setup, because you can put this in and it brings up your attack speed, which is more damage. Calling Strike, which helps on bosses, and then Brutality, multiple totems just gets out more of them. And Brutality, I'm just like leveling this because I also have a Brutality here that I'm leveling. And yeah, the main skill links are Lancing Steel, Impale. This is your 2 link because you want to get to 100% chance to Impale. I guess that's worth mentioning as well. I'm way over the 100% chance to Impale because I went into here, and I also went into this entire wheel here because between the Overwhelm and Impale effect, it probably ends up being worth it. I'm not sure if it would be worth it to drop the Dread Banner. Why am I still at 123? There we go. So if you drop the Dread Banner, you actually go straight to 100. So maybe if you want to do a higher level precision, I might actually need to look into that. But I do believe Dread Banner gives you Impale effect. Yeah, so almost 20 Impale effect. I feel like that's actually ends up being more damage. Impale isn't really shown properly on in-game tooltip, and I'm not a PoB warrior. I don't really plug it in and do all the calcs and all that crap. I'm not really interested in stuff like that because the proof is in the pudding. I did a red tier map and a 5-way Maven fight with like half my gear being crap. Let's keep going into the links. Brutality is just, you know, we're a physical damage build. This is one of the biggest multipliers that you can get. Maim is pretty fantastic. You could probably get it on somewhere else, but I like it in main links, if not just because the chance to maim on hit, you know, the coverage of your projectile, you'll be proccing that on pretty much everything. Vicious projectiles and fork would be the last couple links. What else would I use? You could use slower projectiles instead. Ooh, let's follow this baby. Stream RNG. Okay. What else was it? You could use Stone Golem instead if you want to go a little more tanky. I was using Blasphemy with Vulnerability actually for a time, but that was kind of stupid. You don't really get to use that effectively. Something worth mentioning, Herald of Purity is fantastic for both boss fights. As you saw in the boss I did, they kind of run, what is it? I don't even really know what to call it. They run the pick. Is that what they call it in the basketball? They kind of distract you, the boss rather, the monsters from you who's off screen chucking a bunch of projectiles. It's really nice. It seems a little gimmicky. Again, incidental survivability, not tankiness. It can kind of pull aggro off of you. It does get you killed randomly because they'll be aiming at your minion and then you jump in front of it and you die, but you know, that's just the game. But yeah, this video is almost half an hour long, and it really wasn't supposed to be that long because all you need is a Bell Timber Blade and then do whatever else you want. Nomad's good. Lance Steel's good. I like it a lot. I like the new Deadeye. I think the Deadeye lends itself really well to Lancing Steel as a skill. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments below, or if you have any suggestions for this build, or just tell me how you've started with Deadeye, what you've done with Deadeye, because I do like Deadeye a lot now. I think that it's been given pretty much a fantastic bit of survivability in terms of Windward that it just didn't have before, and then things like Endless Munitions giving 2 projectiles instead of just 1. It's a buff ascendancy. But yeah, this is one of my longer videos, even though the build is quite simple and not even that good. So let's cut it here. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like and follow and all that bullshit. There'll be stuff in the description. There'll be a POB down there, and yeah, let me know in the comments if you need to know anything else about the build, or if you'd like to see anything else on the channel, because I kind of have funded another build that I'm working on that I'm very excited. I'll probably have a guide up for that this weekend as well. But yeah, that's about it. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you very much.